Hello everybody and welcome to another One Piece video. Similar to June of last year, Oda recently announced that he will be taking a 1-month break. Only this time it's to get some eye surgery because he's been struggling with astigmatism. I just want to do a brief illustrative comparison in terms of his art style. So this is the amount of detail that he drew Kuma with early during the post-time skip, and this right here is the way that he drew Kuma recently post-Wano. And just in general, I think it's very important for anyone, not just him, but for everyone, to be able to schedule some time off, to be able to take care of yourselves, because at the end of the day, health has to be a priority. So with that in mind, this kind of goes without saying, but I wish Oda the very best during and after his procedure, as well as a full and speedy recovery. This week, the anime made it a point to show that Zoro does in fact get transported to the land of the dead, and the more I think about it, the more I feel like meeting death is actually an initial prerequisite for a swordsman to be able to craft a black blade. The anime is also handling Izo in a very unique way, because they're making it seem more believable that he actually dies, and not just from a Shigan. I mean, he got stabbed in the abdomen last night. I mean, granted it was a beast pirate fodder, but still, it just seems like they're putting in more effort to lead up to his death. We got a very unique color spread this time around. It's not a typical color spread because if you notice, it's actually a fan request. So maybe he got the request and said, well, since I'm going on a 1-month break, I might as well use this and turn it into a color spread, sort of to give the readers a 1-month send-off. Also, Jinbei and Zoro are missing. I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought about this, but No Rain, No Rainbow is actually the name of a song that is played in the second Naruto Shippuden movie called Bonds. We get a little frog there wearing Usopp's post-time skip hat. And then I love how Frankie's hair turned into an umbrella. And for the sake of chronological consistency, there is a part of me that wishes that these Reverie chapters that we've been getting would have been included in the actual Reverie arc/volume. So in addition to J. Garcia Saturn, we get the names of the remaining 4 Gorosei. The one for Mars is named Marcus, which could be a reference to the famous Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius, especially because in his youth he joined an order of priests dedicated to Mars, the god of war. Additionally, Marcus Aurelius was also described as being one of the 5 good emperors.
Another thing about Marcus is that his design has always reminded me of Gonfal from Skypiea, so I'm wondering if there could be a connection there because Gonfal calls himself the Knight of the Sky, and we have the Holy Knights in Marijoa.
Old Man Mercury's name sounds a lot like Valkyrie, which were the divine winged goddesses/angels from Norse mythology that would help carry souls into Valhalla. Valhalla was sort of like Viking heaven in a way. It was like the Hall of the Slain, which was located in Asgard. Pretty sure Mr. Venus Swordsman Elder has to have a connection to Wano. He looks like an old samurai, has a katana. Pretty sure Zoro's gonna have to face him at some point. And his name happens to end with Judo. Also, his title kind of implies that he's in charge of the finances, which reminds me of Denjiro being a money changer, and also being in charge of Odin's finances as well. Also, the term Baron can be used to refer to somebody of nobility in several places, including Japan. Finally, the name of Saint Shepherd Jew Peter has to be referencing the Catholic/Christian side of things here, because Jesus was often described and depicted as a shepherd, the good shepherd that goes in search of his lost sheep. Also, Peter was obviously a disciple, and in Catholicism, he is considered the founder of the church, and therefore also the very first pope. On a related note, I like how the book that Ivankov gives Sabo so that he could read about the eternal youth surgery says Genesis on the cover, because not only does it remind me of Kuma carrying a book around that says Bible on it, but it's also Oda stressing the connection between some of the pieces of lore scattered throughout the One Piece world that have names that come from the book of Genesis. We have the Adam Tree and Sunlight Tree Eve, as well as Noah's Ark, and Devil Fruits being a reference to the forbidden fruit of the Tree of Knowledge in the Garden of Eden. All those things seem to be very strongly connected. Now, we recently learned that Emu calls themselves Mu, and I saw a lot of people taking that as a reference to the mythical lost continent of Mu, which is also sort of equivalent to the lost city of Atlantis, which I guess kind of makes sense if we connect it to the ancient kingdom being lost in history for the last 800 years. But if we look at the literal translation for the character in Japanese by itself, I believe Mu means void or nothingness, or without. I was watching Demon Slayer, and there's an entire episode named The Mu and Muishiro, which is one of the names of the characters, and by the end, one of the thematic conclusions of the episode is that you can't spell infinity, Mugen in Japanese, without Mu. So if Emu is responsible for the Void Century, and Mu means void, or nothingness, That fits the character perfectly. But then also, if Imu is immortal because the eternal youth surgery has been performed on them, then the character Mu in Infinity would also fit their character perfectly. They'd be the ultimate never-ending void villain of the story, whose name also means sea, spelt backwards in Japanese. And thematically, this also falls into place with the recent shadow powers that were revealed for both Imu and the Gorosei. Now, the way that Oda drew the Gorosei silhouettes, to me they just seem very different to the way that Oda typically draws silhouettes when he's just trying to cover up a character design. So just to make a point here, look at the way that he drew the Holy Knights silhouettes, okay? Look at their feet. Now look at the way that he drew the feet of the Gorosei when they're transformed. Their lower ends look malleable and undefined. Also, their transformation and Imu's transformation appears to be triggered by the fact that Sabo attacks them with fire. It gets me to think that maybe Mu pulled a Voldemort and split his shadow into 6 different parts, because the Gorosei don't seem to age either. So it could be that maybe Imu is sharing some of his or her lifespan with the 5, which means that in order for Luffy to be able to defeat Imu, the Straw Hats will first have to face the Gorosei and defeat them one by one. The shadows also reminded me of Big Mom's incarnations that collect taxes in Totoland. I'm just going to read you their description from the wiki to see if it rings the bell. It says, incarnations are made from pieces of Big Mom's own extremely powerful soul and are themselves capable of extracting other people's souls via soul pocus. They are intelligent enough to be capable of human speech and understand basic orders. And the anime last night reminded me of the physical manifestation of Kanjiro's hatred in a similar form called the Kazembo. Because again, I thought it was interesting that both Imu and the Gorosei's shadow forms appear to be somewhat immune to fire. That being said, if the Gorosei do end up being your typical mythical Zoan devil fruit users, their designs definitely gave me major Impel Down vibes. A couple of them look like they could be awakened Zoans and fit right in with the jailer beasts. I believe Marcus is the one that looks like an awakened basilisk from Impel Down, and then Venus Judo kind of looks like he could be an awakened grasshopper or praying mantis, which, to my point, a praying mantis guard was a creature that we saw back in Impel Down as well. Or maybe he's just like an awakened Zeo from Fishman Island. Now, thanks to Ivankov, we now get a third family name of the 20 original kingdoms that founded the world government, because so far we've only known 2, the Nefertari family and the Don Quixote family, and so now we can add the Nerona family to that list as well. And I think the name of the family is pretty obviously a reference to Roman Emperor Nero, who according to some people made a name for himself for being notoriously cruel and evil as an emperor. Some people hold him responsible for orchestrating the murder of his own mother, the murder of his own wife, as well as being responsible for the burning of over half of Rome to suit his own ambition. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but these last 2 chapters coupled together really make it seem as if Imu had really strong feelings for Lily. I mean, the fact that it's very likely that Vivi and Lily look exactly alike, and the fact that Imu is asking the Gorosei to bring Vivi back alive is a pretty clear indicator of that.
The official translation added some pretty serious heat to this time around, because Imu tells the Gorosei, I desire Vivi. I desire her.
I'll find her if I have to burn down all of Paris.
I'm actually kind of intrigued by this possibility, because one of the things that we know about One Piece as a story is that Oda doesn't really write romance. I mean, there are some love stories that feel a little bit more like bullet points during flashbacks, such as Odin and Toki's story. But overall, like romantic relationships and love stories, they're not a big part of this story. So if it turns out that a love story is behind the creation and the motivation of what could possibly be the biggest and most dangerous antagonist of the series, I think that would be a nice curveball here. I really didn't like it when it happened in Naruto, where it was given as an explanation for why Obito went dark. Because in Naruto, we already had like these other adjacent love triangles and stories like Sasusaku, Naruhina, all that stuff, right? But here, because Oda doesn't do this, I'm actually kind of curious about, okay, how will he handle this? I feel like that would be him sort of stepping out of his comfort zone a little, which I think is a good thing for an artist to do. Also, according to Sandman, one of the things that Oda said that he did not plan for initially was Vivi being a princess. And now her being a princess is this huge freaking deal. I don't even think Vivi was supposed to be a D. So he clearly changed his mind about Vivi. So I'm wondering if like maybe during the process of making that change, maybe he said, okay, what's the history here? What's something new that I haven't written about? And maybe he thought, what about a love story for the Nefertari family, or involving the Nefertari family and the big bad of the series? By the way, I'm guessing that the sword that we see here in the Chamber of Flowers is the blade that belongs to House Nerona. You know, the one that's missing out of the 20 on the floor of the empty throne?
Also, Imu seems super upset over Lily being responsible for spreading the poneglyphs all over the place. He actually calls it her mistake, but I think that's just Imu being in denial. That wasn't a mistake. It was clearly Lily's plan all along, to spread the truth all over the world in different blocks. Which, by the way, confirms that Lily must have had a really close relationship with the people of the Kozuki clan, who crafted the stones in the first place. And that goes back to what I was saying last time, where I think there has to be some kind of warping device, some kind of machine or power that allows people and objects to move around the One Piece globe a lot faster than just sailing on a ship. Because think about it, it's the end of the Void Century War. The world government has come to power, they're persecuting everybody who goes against them. Who would have the time, the resources, and the courage to sail around the world just placing these massive ton-weighing blocks of stone in different locations? It makes more sense for Lily to just be able to hit a button and teleport the blocks away. So I'm wondering if one of the previous users of Van Oker's Devil Fruit helped Lily out with that. Additionally, if Ivankov's theory is correct, then the thing that was able to erase Lelucia from the map has to be either the ancient weapon Uranus or a replica of Pluton, since we know that the original Pluton lies hidden underneath present-day Wano. Now, regardless of which one of the two ancient weapons it turns out to be, given what Saturn says, it appears that the weapon requires some prep time to be able to use, and it also seems to be dependent on Vegapunk's Mother Flame invention to function. So to answer Dragon's question about why the government is barely using the weapon now, instead of, let's say, 22 years ago to erase O'Hara, it is because Vegapunk needed to invent the Mother Flame first, in order for the weapon to have its full destructive capabilities. Now, I bet you anything that Vegapunk's invention of the Mother Flame is based off of what he learned from studying Lunarians and creating the Seraphim. Because the Seraphim are new, and so is the Mother Flame. And the two are entering the story as these technological advancements around the same time, so I can't see the two as being unrelated.
By the way, the official translation calls the Mother Flame the Mother Frame, but I think Mother Flame still works because in Japanese, the R and the L, I think, are indistinguishable. They're interchangeable. Like, we've seen this before with Laugh Tale and how it was pronounced or written as Raff Tail before. Also, Venus Judo says that a test on forested land would do better than the open sea, which means that he wants the forest to burn, which to me implies that the weapon is still fire-based.
Also, I bet you anything that that weapon has the same weakness as King, where it can sacrifice durability for speed. I think that's one of the reasons for why the weapon needs to use the clouds as cover, because after it fires its power, that's when the machine is in its most vulnerable state. Also, Imu specifically chooses Lelucia because it's close by, which kind of implies that the energy provided by the Mother Flame could run out, so it's a finite source of energy. And this goes along perfectly with what we heard Lilith say about how one of Vegapunk's aspirations is to be able to create an infinite source of energy that doesn't run out. Except Vegapunk hasn't been able to create that just yet, which further supports the point that I made in this video here, where I say that because we know that Vegapunk cannot recreate Logias, it's very likely that Logia awakenings will be tied to a divine and infinite supply of energy for the user. On a related note, it's going to be interesting to find out what Devil Fruit power Seraphim Crocodile has, because, again, Vegapunk can't recreate Logia powers. Seraphim, Dofi, and Moria should have their respective Devil Fruits because those are Paramecias. But Kid Crocodile, who I believe continues to look pretty androgynous, has to be either a Zoan or a Paramecia user. So what if he just turns into an actual crocodile? I think that's it, right? Those are the original 7 Chichibukai turned Seraphim. There being a Blackbeard Seraphim is questionable because he was the one who replaced Crocodile. And speaking of the Kid Chichibukai, this chapter strongly hints at how it was that Doflamingo learned about the Eternal Youth Surgery in the first place. I bet you little kid Doflamingo probably heard rumors about Mu the Immortal when he was growing up in Marijoa. And since we now know that Mu has this strange, shadow-based, devil tail sort of power, I wonder if this is why Doflamingo was ordered to kill Moria after Marineford. Because Dofi did say that the orders to eliminate Moria came from the higher-ups above Sengoku. So I'm wondering if the government ordered Doflamingo to kill Moria and retrieve the Kage Kage no Mi. Because after Ace's death, Dofi ended up getting the Mera Mera no Mi. So I'm wondering if Imu may have the superior version of Moria's Devil Fruit power. It appears that Imu is not the only one interested in Vivi. We get a Sanji-like panel of Stelly with the hard eyes staring at a picture of her. And so similar to Wapol, who we saw slapped Vivi in the Reverie and is now sort of in the beginnings of a redemption arc, given that Stelly has always been a scumbag, I wonder if this attraction that he feels for Vivi could be useful to redeem an aspect aspect of his character if it turns out that Stelly ends up helping Vivi out or supporting her in the future because of this infatuation.
And speaking of softening people up, I find it interesting that at least when it comes to some of the Gorosei, the initial plan for them was to test the weapon in a place where there were no people, and there is some degree of hesitance from their part when Imu orders them to attack Lulusia instead. It's also kind of hard to empathize with Cinderella's reaction to Wapol and Vivi, especially since in the cover story where she was introduced, she basically ends up marrying Wapol only after he gets rich, so the story kind of made it seem like she was kind of a gold digger. I mean, not that Wapol is any kind of role model as a human being, but you get what I'm saying. In a way, they kind of deserve each other.
I literally just remembered that Stelly, just like Wapol, is married. Stelly is married to a woman called Sori Nantokanet, whose name is a pun on Marie Antoinette. She's the one getting angry at him over his reaction to the Vivi poster. We also got to see Rob Lucci's subordinate, Spandam, in this chapter as well. So at this point, we've seen pretty much all of the previous CP9 members, post-time skip. So if only Wapol had been there along with the Straw Hats during Aeneas' lobby to rescue Robin, things would have been a lot easier.
By the way, there's a quote that is typically attributed to Marie Antoinette, and that is, "Let them eat cake," which we see at the end of the chapter, as the Celestial Dragons complain that they have no food, no bread, only cake to eat. I also really like how, because the Marines are spread thin due to having to stop these rebellions and also deal with the ending of the Shichibukai system, it really does seem like the Marines can't afford to do anything against Fujitori's behavior, because he's constantly going against the system and seems to experience very little consequences for doing so, whereas somebody like Mio's guard gets flogged and crucified because he protected a mermaid due to him inheriting Otohime's will. After being mentioned in Film Red, the Figarland family name is officially canon now. The name has been used in relation to both Shanks and Uta, and you can already see the stark family contrast between somebody like Shanks, who protects the underprivileged and the needy, and somebody like Garling, who says that those who break the rules are scum, and those who abandon their scum are also lower than the scum of the friends that they make along the way, and Joy Boy let Lily die, so he's the real villain of the story. Anyway, one of the things that these two chapters have in common is that they've kind of changed the way we understood that the D initial works, because now it seems pretty obvious that the D initial isn't necessarily related to genetics or a specific family tree, at least in regards to how it might have originated in the first place. It just seems like the D initial is more of a code or a symbol that could have been either granted or earned by people in the past. At the very least, we can say that Oda seems to be implying that the D initial is somewhat transferable regardless of bloodline, which I kind of like in a way, because I think it kind of revitalizes the theme of free will in the story that was kind of tarnished by the Luffy being the kid of the prophecy reveal in Wano. Plus, it also goes along with one of the main themes of the story, which is to be able to bring different types of people together regardless of where they come from.
I kind of got the impression from his introductory panel that Garling only has one arm. Also, it's clear as day now that the Ancient Kingdom must have had something to do with space. The Gorosei are named after planets. Luffy is the sun. The three ancient weapons also referencing planets. The Celestial Dragons dress themselves up as astronauts. Garling has the crescent moon shaped to his beard and face. King turned himself into a UFO during his fight against Zoro, and he was from a race of people that was wiped out, possibly during the Void Century. Blackbeard has the whole dark hole thing going on. So yeah, space. It's just one of those things that appears to be getting more and more important. We learned from Film Red that Roger found Shanks inside of a treasure chest that he took from God's Valley. So it's pretty obvious now that Shanks is from the Figarland family. And not only that, but I'm actually willing to bet that the Figarland family is one of the original 20 founding families that established the world government. Because by the end of the chapter, we find out that Garling has the authority to judge other celestial dragons. And not just any, like Mio's guard is not just any celestial dragon, he's a direct descendant of the Don Quixote family. And we know that the Don Quixote family was one of the original 20. So I feel like there might be a law that says that only direct descendants of the original 20 kingdoms have the authority to judge each other. So maybe this is why Lily never made it home, because of House Nerona.
Choose me or the fire.
That is going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for all of your understanding. Last week when I couldn't upload a video, it really did mean a lot, just being able to know that you guys understood. Now we are going into an extensive break here, the void month, as I've heard some people call it, but I promise that I will have something for you during this break. In fact, I actually kind of like breaks because they give you more time to think. Just a quick FYI, next weekend, I believe it's on the 17th, Netflix has an event where they basically reveal and show content of their upcoming shows, and One Piece is advertised as part of the lineup. So I would not be surprised if we get a One Piece live action trailer or at least some content out of that. Now, I'm not going to say that this had anything to do with the timing of Oda scheduling his surgery, but I will say that hypothetically, if I were to schedule surgery, if I needed to get surgery, I would probably schedule it during a time where a trailer to one of the most controversial projects that I'm involved in might drop. Just so I don't have to deal with the negativity in case there is some, you know? I'd be like, nope, I'm resting, sorry. And then the week after that is the finale of the Kid and Law versus Big Mom fight in the anime, which I've heard good things about production-wise. Like, people are hyping it up, so there's that to look forward to. Thank you so much for watching, and again, for all of your support. Take care, have a great week, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.